She walked into the music academy quietly, almost like a shadow. She didn't speak much, didn't smile a lot, and didn't try to get attention like some of the other students. Most people didn't even notice her at first. She was just the quiet girl in the back to many of the teachers. Her clothes were simple. She carried an old bag and her piano books looked worn. One teacher looked at her and thought, "She doesn't look serious." Another whispered to a fellow teacher, "She'd probably drop out before the recital." From the beginning, she kept to herself. While others asked questions, cracked jokes, or played loudly on the piano to show off, she just listened. Paid attention but never raised her hand. And so, slowly, the teachers formed their opinion. They thought she wasn't trying. They thought she was too quiet, too distant, maybe not even interested in music at all. One day, the head teacher called her into a room. She was told that for the upcoming Indovia recital, she had to perform a very difficult piano piece, one that even the top students were nervous to try. She looked at the teacher and simply nodded. No excitement, no fear, just a soft okay. Before she turned and walked away, the teachers thought this was a mistake. "Why did she say yes so easily?" one of them asked. "Does she even know how hard that piece is?" But she never complained. She never asked to change the piece or switch to something easier. She just continued with her quiet routine, coming to class, sitting at the back, and leaving without a word. At home, no one knew what she was going through at the academy. She didn't talk about it. She lived with her grandmother in a small apartment. The place was always calm. There was no TV, no noise. Just her grandmother, and an old upright piano in the corner of the living room. That piano was her world. It was where she spent hours every day playing softly, trying new things, listening to how the keys felt under her fingers. She didn't need sheet music. She learned by listening. She could hear a song once and then play it back, adding her own feelings into each note. But she never told anyone. She didn't think it was special. It was just her way of feeling peaceful. Back at the academy, the teachers watched her closely. Weeks passed. While others were showing their progress, she never played the piece during practice in front of the class. The teachers grew more frustrated. "She's not preparing," they said. "She's wasting her chance." Some even thought about removing her from the recital. "If she can't handle it, she'll embarrass the school," one said. But still, she stayed calm. She kept coming to class and stayed until the very end. Her face never showed panic. Her fingers sometimes tapped lightly on the table as if she was practicing in her mind. One classmate tried to ask her if she needed help with the piece. She just smiled and said, "No, thank you." That was all. No one could understand her silence. No one could see what was really happening behind those quiet eyes. They thought they were pushing a weak student to work harder. They had no idea who she really was, what she was truly capable of. They didn't know that the one they thought was least prepared was actually someone beyond their understanding. Storm was coming, but it was still hidden, waiting for the right moment. And she was just waiting too. The teachers kept watching her from a distance. Every week they waited for her to mess up or ask for help, but she never did. She just stayed quiet, always in her own world. To them it looked like she didn't care. Some even said she was being lazy. "She's not practicing enough," one teacher said. "She doesn't show any passion. She's just wasting our time." What they didn't know was that she was more connected to music than most people ever would be. She didn't need to show off in class. She didn't need loud praise or attention. Music wasn't just a subject for her. It was a feeling that lived inside her. Every day, she had started playing piano when she was just a child. Not because anyone forced her, not because she had teachers guiding her, but because she had found an old broken keyboard in a storage room of the apartment building where she lived. It had missing keys and a broken speaker, but she didn't care. Even as a child, she would sit there for hours, pressing the keys, listening to the sounds, trying to copy songs she heard on the radio. By the time she was 10, she could hear any tune once and play it back perfectly. She didn't read sheet music. She didn't need to. She understood the emotions in each note. Her grandmother saw this in her, saved money for months to buy her a second-hand piano from a neighbor. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Since then, the young woman played every night. Not for school, not for rewards, but because that was when she felt most alive. At the music academy, she didn't play in front of others. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't feel the need to prove herself. And in a world where most students fought to be seen, her silence made the teachers think she wasn't trying. One teacher tried to push her harder. "You can't stay silent forever," he said. "This is a competition. You need to show us something." She just nodded politely. She wasn't trying to be rude. She simply didn't see music as a competition. Some classmates also didn't understand her. They would whisper in corners, "She's going to fail." Others laughed behind her back, saying, "She probably doesn't even know how to play the first page of the piece." But at home, in her quiet room, she was doing something very different. She wasn't just playing the difficult piece. She was studying it like a story. She listened to the full version over and over again. She closed her eyes and imagined the music like waves, each part carrying a new emotion. She would sit for hours in the evening, her fingers moving softly over the keys, playing parts of the piece slowly, feeling the rhythm, shaping the sound. She didn't need to rush. Her fingers already knew what to do. Her grandmother often sat in the kitchen listening, smiling quietly. She never interrupted, never asked questions. She just let her granddaughter be. One night, the young woman stopped playing and looked out. The window, the street below, was quiet. A soft breeze came in through the small opening. She whispered to herself, "They think I can't do it." Then she gently placed her fingers back on the keys and started from the beginning again. She wasn't angry. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just letting the music speak for her. The teachers didn't know. Classmates didn't know. But something beautiful was building up quietly. And the day it would come out, they were not ready for it. At the academy, days kept passing. The recital was now only a few weeks away. Every student was getting nervous, practicing their pieces again and again. Some were asking teachers for help. Others were rushing through the halls with their music sheets in hand. There was noise. Stress, pressure, dash everywhere. Except around her. She was still quiet, still calm, still watching from the back of the room. Teachers noticed, and it made them even more frustrated. "She's not serious," one of them said. "Open her sheet music. She's going to fail on stage," another said, shaking his head. One teacher even pulled her aside and asked, "Do you know how difficult this piece is? Are you even practicing at home?" She looked at him and nodded gently. "Yes, I am." But that answer didn't feel enough for the teacher. He wanted to hear more. He wanted her to act like the other students, nervous, panicked, full of questions. But she didn't, because at home her training was not like everyone else's. She didn't sit with pages of notes or follow step-by-step instructions. She used her ears, her heart, and her memory. Every evening after her schoolwork and house chores, she would sit at her piano. No one told her when to start or stop. She would sit down, close her eyes, and let the music guide her fingers. She didn't only practice the notes, she practiced the feelings. She asked herself questions. What is this part trying to say? Why does this part sound sad? Where should I slow down to make it more powerful? And then she would play slow, careful, with full attention. If she made a mistake, she didn't get upset. She just smiled and tried again. She was building something inside her. It was slow, it was deep, but it was real. At the academy, the other students were starting to notice her more. Not because she spoke, but because she seemed so ... different. "She's too calm," one said. "Maybe she's not even going to perform," another guessed. One boy tried to tease her during lunch. "Hey, are you sure you'll survive on stage? That piece is a monster." She just gave a small smile. "I'll be fine," she replied softly. But behind her soft voice, there was something solid. She didn't need to fight back with words. She had something else, something stronger. Still, the teachers kept doubting her. Some of them even talked about replacing her piece with something easier. "She won't make it through the recital," one said. "She freezes under pressure." "She should just play a simple song," another added. But when they told her this, she surprised them. She looked straight at them and said in a calm but clear voice, "No, I want to play this piece." It was the first time they heard her speak with firmness. It was gentle, but it carried strength. The room went quiet for a moment. One teacher opened his mouth to speak, but then stopped. There was something in her eyes, something unshaken. They didn't know what to say after that. She walked away like she always did, quiet, respectful, and calm. But now, something had changed. They had pushed her, thinking she would fall. Instead, she stood tall, without shouting, without showing off. Just calm, ready. Something was coming. And they still didn't see it. They had given her the hardest piece to test her. But they didn't. Realized they had lit a spark that would soon turn into something unforgettable. The recital was now very close. It's just 1 week away. The academy halls were filled with the sound of music and nerves. Students were practicing over and over again. Some played too fast, others kept restarting from the middle. Teachers ran from room to room, giving tips, correcting mistakes, and offering last-minute advice. Everyone was feeling the pressure, except her. She came to class as usual, quiet, focused, calm. She still didn't show off. She didn't ask questions. She didn't complain. She just sat in the back of the practice room listening to others, watching, observing. The teacher still whispered behind her back, "She doesn't act like someone ready to perform." One teacher even said, "She's going to freeze. That stage will eat her alive." Another replied, "I hope she doesn't embarrass the school." Some students agreed. They laughed quietly when she walked past. One even said loud enough for her to hear, "If she plays that piece, it's going to be a disaster." But she didn't react. Not with anger, not with fear. She just kept walking with her usual soft steps, her eyes steady, her hands tucked into her sleeves. What no one knew was how much effort she was putting in when no one was watching at home. She stayed up late every night with her piano. The lights in the house would be dim. Her grandmother would be asleep. And she would be at the piano, playing the piece again and again, not for anyone else, but for herself. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She didn't try to be perfect. She tried to be real. She played with feeling, like she was telling a story through the keys. She listened deeply to each note, each pause, each shift in tone. She knew the piece wasn't easy, but she didn't fear it. She respected it. Some parts of the music were fast and strong like a thunderstorm, okay? Other parts were soft like a gentle rain. She made each section come alive in her own way. One night, while she was playing, she stopped suddenly in the middle of the song. She sat there, silent. Her hands rested on the keys. For the first time, she felt a small wave of doubt. "What if I fail?" she whispered to herself. "What if they all laugh?" The room was quiet. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. She looked at her hands and took a deep breath. Then she remembered something her grandmother had once told her. If music is in your heart, don't hide it. Let it speak. A small smile formed on her face. She placed her fingers on the piano again and started from the beginning, this time with even more feeling. She didn't need anyone to believe. In her, she just needed to believe in herself. Back at the academy, the teachers were making the final performance list. Some still talked about removing her from the hard piece. One teacher said, "Let's just move her to something easier. She's not ready." But before any decision was made, the head teacher said no. She insisted on playing it. Let her. We'll see what happens. And that was it. The decision was final. She would perform that same difficult piece in front of a big crowd. No one expected much from her, in fact. Most expected failure. But she wasn't afraid. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just preparing for the moment when the world would finally hear her, not through her words, but through the music she had carried inside her for years. The day of the recital finally arrived. The music academy was filled with people, parents, students, teachers, even a few guests from other schools. The hall was decorated with flowers, soft lights, and a big black piano sat in the center of the stage, shining under the spotlight. Backstage, students were getting ready. Some were fixing their clothes. Others were pacing nervously or reading through their sheet music one last time. Teachers were busy making sure everything was in order. She stood in the corner, alone and calm as always. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't sweating or shaking like many others. She just stood quietly, holding nothing but herself. Some students looked at her and whispered, "She's actually going to play it. She won't even make it past the first line. But she's too quiet for this." But she didn't hear them more. Maybe she did and simply didn't care. One by one, the students went up on stage. Each one played their piece. Some did well, some made small mistakes. Every time someone finished, the crowd clapped politely. When it was finally her turn, the host called her name. The room fell silent. She walked up slowly, taking careful steps. Her head was slightly bowed. Her hands were relaxed at her sides. The audience looked curious. The teachers looked unsure. Some leaned forward, as if expecting something to go wrong. She reached the piano, pulled out the bench, and sat down. She didn't adjust her seat too much. She didn't check her music sheet. In fact, there was no sheet in front of her. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and gently placed her fingers on the keys. For a moment, it was complete silence. Then came the first note. It was soft, clear, and full of feeling. The second note followed, then the third, and, just like that, the music began to flow like water. Within seconds, the room changed. The crowd that was just moments ago filled with doubt suddenly sat still, listening closely. Her fingers moved smoothly, gracefully. Each note had emotion. Each pause had meaning. She wasn't just playing the piano, she was telling a story, one that didn't need words. People in the crowd started leaning forward, drawn in by the power of her performance. The teachers stared in silence, their earlier doubts now turning into shock. They had never heard the piece played like this. Not by any student, and certainly not with this kind of soul. She played the fast parts like a storm, full of energy but under control. She played the soft parts like a whisper, making the whole hall feel warm and still. Her eyes stayed closed. Her body stayed calm. It was as if the piano and her heart were speaking to each other directly, with no one else in the room. By the time she reached the final part of the piece, some people in the crowd had tears in their eyes. The music touched something inside them, something deep, and then the last note came. She let it ring out softly, then slowly lifted her hands from the keys. Silence again, but this time it wasn't cold or doubtful. It was the kind of silence that happens when something beautiful has just ended. Then, like a wave, the room exploded with applause. Loud, real, and full of emotion. People stood up. Some clapped with both hands raised. A few were even crying. The teachers didn't know what to say. One covered his mouth. Another just sat with wide eyes. She stood up quietly, bowed once, and walked off the stage the same way she had walked on, calm, steady, and without needing praise. But now, everything was different. Everyone had seen what she had been hiding all along, and no one could forget it. As she stepped off the stage, the applause still echoed behind her, but she didn't turn to look back. She walked calmly, just like always. There was no smile on her face, no proud look. She didn't need any of that. Her music had already said everything. Backstage, a few students who had once doubted her were now staring with wide eyes. No one said anything, but their silence was louder than all their earlier whispers. One student, who used to laugh at her, now just looked down at the floor. She didn't stop for anyone. She went straight to the corner where she had stood before. The performance. She sat down on a small wooden chair and took a slow breath. Her hands rested gently on her lap, still and quiet, as if nothing big had happened. But something big had happened. Inside the hall, people were still talking. The audience couldn't stop sharing what they had just witnessed. That wasn't just playing, one parent said. That was something else. It felt like the music was alive. Another whispered, "Who is she? How can someone play like that without even looking at the keys?" Even the head teacher looked shocked. His eyes were fixed on the stage long after she had left it. He turned to the other staff and said, We didn't see it. We missed it completely." Of the teachers who had doubted her the most were now silent. One of them rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed. Another nodded slowly, as if finally understanding something he should have seen earlier. Nobody expected this from the girl who always sat at the back, the one who never spoke much, the one they thought was not ready, not good enough. Now, the same teachers were talking about her in a completely different tone. "She didn't just play the piece," one said softly. "She gave it meaning. She played better than anyone we've trained this year," another added. Soon, the head teacher left his seat and walked backstage. He found her still sitting quietly in the corner. He stood in front of her for a few seconds, unsure of what to say. Then he finally spoke. "You surprised all of us tonight," he said. She looked up at him, calm and polite. "Thank you." He paused, searching for the right words. "We misjudged you. Sorry. We should have listened. We should have seen it." She gave a small nod. "It's okay," she replied. There was no anger in her voice, no pride either, just softness. One of the other teachers came forward. "Would you be interested in helping us teach the younger students? They could learn so much from you." She looked down for a moment, thinking. Then she said, "Maybe. But only if they learn to feel the music, not just play the notes." Everyone nearby fell silent again. In that one moment they knew she wasn't just a student. She was something more, a quiet, rare talent. Someone whose gift couldn't be measured by how loud she was in class or how many questions she asked. Her gift was quiet but powerful, like the music she played. After the recital, as people left the hall, her performance was still the main topic. No one even remembered the mistakes made by other students. No one talked about who wore what. All they could talk about was how she played that difficult piece like it was part of her soul, and still. She didn't seek attention. She didn't ask for praise. She had simply done what she always did and let the music speak. After the recital, word spread fast, even before she reached home that night. Her performance had become the talk of the academy. Students who once didn't even remember her name now spoke of her with respect. Teachers who had once doubted her were now speaking in meetings, using words like gifted and genius. But she didn't care about any of that. She walked home in silence, just like always. The streets were quiet. A cool breeze moved through the trees. As she reached her building, she looked up at the window of her apartment. The light in the living room was on. Her grandmother was waiting. When she opened the door and stepped inside, the smell of warm tea welcomed her. Her grandmother looked at her from the kitchen and gave a soft smile. "How did it go?" she asked gently. She placed her bag down, took a deep breath, and smiled back. "I think they finally heard me," she said. Her grandmother didn't ask more. She simply poured a cup of tea and placed it on the table. That was her way of saying, "I'm proud of you," without needing to say it out loud. That night, she didn't play the piano. She just sat by the window, looking at the sky, thinking about everything. The next morning at the academy, things felt different. The same teachers, who once ignored her, now greeted her warmly. Some even asked her questions. One said, "We'd like to invite you to a regional performance next month. You'll be the opening act." She nodded politely. "Thank you. I'll think about it." Oh, she was never rude, never loud. She stayed. Just as she had always been, calm, quiet, steady, but now. People listened when she spoke. Students who once made fun of her now sat with her during lunch. A few even asked if she could teach them how to feel the music like she did, and slowly, without planning it, she became someone others looked up to, not because she asked for it, but because she earned it. She didn't care for trophies or big praise. All she wanted was to play honestly from the heart. And now, others were starting to understand what that meant. One evening, the academy held a small event just for the top students. They invited her to perform again, but this time she played something different. Not the difficult piece she was forced to learn, but a soft melody she had written herself at home. It was simple, but full of soul. As she played, the whole room went quiet. Even the teacher sat still, listening with full attention. Some closed their eyes. Others smiled, and once again, she said more through her music than words ever could. After the event, a young student came up to her, little girl no older than 10, holding a small music book. She looked up and asked, "Can you teach me how to play like that?" She bent down, smiled, and said, "Of course. But first, tell me what music feels like to you." The little girl thought for a moment and said, "Like when the rain falls and it's quiet. But nice." She nodded. "That's a good start." And just like that, a new journey began, not just for the young girl, but for her too. She had once been ignored, misunderstood, pushed into silence. Now she had found her voice, not through shouting, not through showing off, but through quiet power, through music. And those who once didn't believe in her, they didn't just respect her now, they finally saw her for who she really was. Not just a quiet girl in the back of the class, but a true artist. Genius in her own quiet way. And she didn't need to prove anything anymore. The piano would always speak for her.